What's up guys, it's Tony here. Welcome back to Man Cave Studios. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am going to do a little bit of a throwback to the Storytime series on this channel and tell you about my experience going to Game 7 of the 2024 Stanley Cup Final. So, I had spent a lot of time throughout that spring debating whether I wanted to go to Game 7 of the Final. And I came to the consensus that if it was in Florida, Carolina, or Dallas, I would go. And so Florida beat New York, thankfully, which I was, as a Flyers fan, I was very glad of. And then Dallas did lose to Edmonton, which actually made it easier for me because then I knew for sure where Game 7 of that final was going to be. That actually happened after Florida had already gotten to the final. So I was sort of still on the fence about maybe if it was in Dallas going. But a little bit more of a backstory, my dad and I had just been in Miami and went to a Panthers game the previous December. So, I knew what I was doing, I knew where I was going, and I knew the general area, how to get there, all of that. So, I signed up for the Florida Panthers newsletter thing and basically got on their marketing list and all their communications and stuff at the very start of that series, right before tickets went on sale for the games in that final. Florida was going to host games 1, 2, 5, and 7 at home. So they made all of those tickets available. Even the games that they didn't know would happen, they made all of them available, which is what teams usually do. And then if those games don't happen, they refund the people who bought the tickets. So I bought the ticket for Game 7 of the final, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go all out, front row of my section. It was only $800. Not even kidding. $800 for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final? Absolutely. Do you know what the prices in that section were like when that game was for sure going to happen? They were like $1,500 at least each ticket to sit like a few rows behind me. The seats in my row, in my section, they weren't even available. So I was like, hell yeah, and then I booked a hotel room and found that it was non-refundable. So I was like, oh my god, I just wasted $350 if this game doesn't happen. And yes, it was only $350 for the hotel room that I had right across the street from the arena at the time. So this is what happens, alright? You know the story. Florida goes up 3-0 in the final. Everybody thinks it's over, including me. I'm sitting there watching the final saying, oh, you know what? Good for Florida. I hope they win Game 4. They lose Game 4. They get absolutely smoked. Game 5 happens. It's on home ice. I'm like, alright, this is going to be like the Vegas series last year. There's no way that Florida is losing this game. It's another boring final that ends in 5. Well, Edmonton cruises to a win in that game. Florida looks better at the end, and so part of me is thinking, okay, maybe, but Florida did look really good in the last like 5 to 10 minutes of that game. I think, even though Edmonton is a hostile environment, I think they're going to win in Game 6. Game 6 starts, and it's all Edmonton from the start. And I'm sitting there, not liking Edmonton, but cheering for Edmonton, because as time went on in that game, I'm sitting there realizing, holy shit, I'm going to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. There were 2 days between Game 6 and Game 7. The morning of the 23rd, June 23rd arrives, and my flight is scheduled to go out of Atlantic City. I'm supposed to wake up at 7 a.m. to go down there. I live probably an hour and a half away from Atlantic City. So I go to bed at like 9 o'clock. I really can't sleep, but I'm like keeping my phone off and trying to stay away from everything, and I wake up at like 6:30 maybe, and check my phone, and I have an email from Spirit saying there was an issue with the aircraft, and you know, I didn't read it, you know, in full. I was just reading it like as I sat in the car as I was about to drive to the airport. So I drive an hour and a half to the Atlantic City airport, and I get there, and everything seems fine on the surface, but the seat that I had was gone. Like the name, the number of the seat, like the row and everything, I had booked that the day before and it was gone. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, let me go talk to the gate agent. So I talk to the gate agent, and now you know, this probably sounds like some of your guys' travel stories too, because traveling is a nightmare anymore. So I talk to the gate agent, and they're like, we're trying to get people checked in, it'll be a few seconds. about 10 minutes later, they start sending everybody down to recheck in. That's all they say. They say you have to recheck in at the very entrance. So anybody that didn't have an assigned seat had to go down, and it turns out the aircraft had downsized. They had gotten a smaller aircraft because there was a problem with the original one. So they had basically kicked off, I think, more than half of the flight. Now, luckily, I was one of the first people down there. So I was one of the first people to find out. Everybody around me was pissed. I was fuming. So I get out of the airport and I start walking back to my car. That was money that I'll never get back, paying for parking there. And I'm calling my mom and my dad actually were going to a Phillies game. And I'm like, I'm driving to Miami. And they're like, no, we'll look for a flight. So they found me a flight, because at the gate they were telling us that there weren't going to be many available flights anywhere. I don't know why I believe them, because there were several out of Philly. But they were all later in the day. So I went home, and then I went to the Philly airport at about 1:30, 2 o'clock. I got to the Philly airport, everything went fine. I had the boarding pass, I checked in and all that. Eventually, I'm like watching the inbound flight on FlightAware, and it hasn't taken off by, I don't even know, like 4 o'clock, and it's supposed to be a 6 o'clock flight, and I'm like, there's no way this is taking off on time. Not a shot. And there are sunny skies, it's bright and sunny at the time, it's very nice outside, but it's going to rain later, so I switched the flight, because I'm like, if it starts storming at 8 o'clock, then this plane is not going to take off at that point, so let me try to get an earlier flight. So I move up to a flight that's about like 20-30 minutes earlier. I'm waiting online to board that plane, but then they announced that because there are storms in the area, which by this point it was starting to rain a little bit and there were storms in the area, they weren't going to board the plane yet. Okay, fine. I am fine with waiting another half hour. I have been here at various airports. I've been to 2 airports today. I'm going to wait here, and this plane will probably take off at about, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock, hopefully. 9:30 comes around. I think they start boarding the plane at like 8, and they just keep everybody there. So we're all just sitting on the plane, and there's a 15-minute like lightning rule. Like if there's lightning within a certain amount of distance, then they have to keep all the crew off of the runway for like 15 to 30 minutes. I don't know how the math works out, but ultimately that became like an hour and a half. The plane takes off at 10:30 to 11 o'clock. It's a 2.5 hour flight to Florida. So I get to the airport at approximately 1 in the morning. Luckily, I'm able to just keep pushing back the time I'm picking up the rental car, but I realize that if I get there after 2 and before 4, then I'm screwed because there's nobody that's going to be at the kiosk between those times. So I am freaking out, hoping that this plane takes off before midnight, because otherwise I'm toast. Luckily, I'm able to get the car. Thank God I did get a car, because if I didn't and I had kept with the Uber plan, that would have been stupid, because I doubt I would have gotten an Uber from the airport at 1 in the morning. I get to the hotel at about 2 in the morning, and I'm absolutely starving, and I don't know why until I realized I hadn't eaten anything since like 12:30 in the afternoon. I had a DiGiorno pizza, and I hadn't eaten anything after that except like maybe a few snacks, and I'm like, oh God, I'm hungry, but what am I going to eat? Well, at this hotel, they're giving out cookies when you check in. They ask you if you want a cookie when you check in. So I'm like, oh yay, dinner. And then I wake up the next morning about 9 a.m. and I'm trying to go to this place that my dad and I went to in December. I don't even remember what it's called now. I'm trying to block that out of my mind, but it was really good. And I find out that it's closed. So that was supposed to be my meal the next morning, and it wound up not. So I'm starving, and I wind up eating at Starbucks, and I'm pissed. Until ultimately I wind up going on a tour of the Miami Marlins ballpark, and then finally this trip is yielding some positive results. After that, I go to the hotel, and I'm watching the Euro 2024. So I'm just like lying there for maybe like an hour and a half, and then ultimately I'm like, I'm just gonna go and see, you know, the festivities. I'm like watching NHL Network, building myself up to go there, and it all looks so fun. And so I just go there, and there are helicopters overhead and everything, and I'm like amazed, and I'm still not believing that I'm going to Game 7 of the final, because I didn't even allow myself to do that, especially because I thought that there was going to be some problem somewhere in getting down there, and I was right. But I wouldn't allow myself to be happy until I was there in the building and in my seat. And so ultimately the gates open, my ticket scans, which was another fear of mine that, I don't know, some software glitch would happen. But I get in and I see my seat and I look out there and I realize, oh my God, I've never been to a Stanley Cup playoffs game before, and here I am at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Now the rest is history. You know how the game goes. After the game, I'm, part of the whole celebration, leaving the building. I just go right to the hotel, which takes me about, 5 minutes to get back to. There's, not a lot of traffic at all coming out of the arena. I also didn't park at the arena. I parked at Sawgrass Mills, which is across the street from the arena, and also, halfway between where my hotel was and where the arena was. But I go back to the hotel. I basically edit the vlog from there, and then I go to bed. The next day, I wake up at 10 o'clock and I do this, tour of Fort Lauderdale, just kind of look around the area, go to a few museums, and then wind up heading home after that. Now, obviously, today is the anniversary of that game. I did not go to Game 7 of the final this year. I don't know when the next time I'll go to a Stanley Cup playoffs game or Stanley Cup final game will be, but that was an incredible experience. And I would absolutely do that again with the travel issues and all. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching, and peace out, broskies.